Okay, so today we're going to be reacting to an episode of the most recent episode of The Matt Walsh Show. So I haven't listened to The Matt Walsh Show for well over a year now, maybe even 2 years. And I used to, I've seen a couple clips, but not even that much, to be honest. But I used to, religiously listen to it. I would listen to it every single time it came up with the episode. I'd even go and, listen to some of the older stuff. Pretty much anything Matt Walsh appeared on, I was listening to for better part of like 3 years, I would guess. So I've changed my mind a lot on a lot of stuff, so I'm just kind of curious on how much I'm going to agree with him, seeing as I used to listen to him a lot and haven't for a little bit. So, without further ado, here we go.
Surrounding the now canceled new season of The Bachelorette reveals a major double standard in how we.
So the beginning.
Today, on the Matt Walsh Show, we'll talk about why the old school method of kicking your kids out at 18 and forcing them to make their own way in the world is actually a terrible idea, and actually much more modern than it is old school. Plus, controversy surrounding the now canceled new season of The Bachelorette reveals a major double standard in how we treat and view domestic violence. Nick Shirley investigated hospice fraud in California. We'll show you what he found. And the media seems to have started a renewed push to normalize polyamorous marriages. We'll talk about all that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show.
They always change the intro, every so it's weird seeing it different. That music they've had for a long time, but I think they changed it for a little while and then they brought it back. But maybe it's been this one for a long time.
A few days ago,
These shows always have really high production value. That's one thing I will say I'm a bit jealous on is they always have really, really high production values. So I'll give them that.
I did something you're not supposed to do on
Daily Wire does a good job.
social media. I changed my mind about something. In particular, I had a change of heart on an issue that's apparently very contentious for millions of people. I wrote that while I used to be in the camp that said you should kick your kids out of the house at 18 in order to force them to live independently and make their own way in the world, I don't feel that way anymore. As I've grown older and had kids of my own, I've come to see things differently. My preference now is for all of my children to live with us until they're married. And even after they're married, if they want to live on our property or close by, my wife and I would be very much in favor of that. My goal now is to establish basically a family compound where everybody can live if they want to. I'm not going to force my children to do so once they're adults, but it's my strong preference because I actually like my kids. I enjoy being around them. I think keeping a family together is important. I want to be close by to help them when they have kids of their own one day. The benefits of this arrangement are numerous, and I've taught my kids responsibility. They contribute. They contribute around the house. They aren't ungrateful, useless moochers.
So far, well, I haven't given this too much thought, and I'm obviously biased as somebody who's currently living with my parents, and I don't want to say, oh yeah, just kick them out at 18, because then that goes against what I'd like. But just so far, I'd say I agree. I think this is about the position people should hold.
Of course, it's bad to allow your older kids and adult kids to shirk responsibility and sit around your house all day, hang out in the basement or whatever without work.
Exactly, that's the issue, right? Is the question is, what is your kid doing? I think it's less about like, oh, just get your kick your kid out, get rid of him. It's like, well, what are they doing at the current moment, right?
Working or contributing. But provided that you aren't doing that, provided that everybody in the household is pitching in and working hard in one capacity or another, then what's the problem? Why exactly should I kick them out? Why should I drive them from the family home?
Exactly.
Is that the goal of parenthood, to raise your kids, send them 1,000 miles away so you only see them on holidays for the rest of your life? Now, a lot of parents in the modern age seem to think, at least in this country, that you reap the rewards of parenting by kicking them out of the house and reclaiming your independence or whatever. So the reward is just sort of going back to your pre-parent state. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, the reward should be a family.
Yeah. So if the goal is to just get rid of your kids as soon as you have them, and that's the reward, then just don't have them at all, and just don't have kids. Then you're always that way. It is really weird to view it that way.
That you love and get to enjoy until you die. The reward should be raising children who one day also become companions, and eventually, as you become very old, they become caretakers. The reward is not, or shouldn't be, 30.
It's essentially you want your success to live on in a successor. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that success will be, exactly what you were successful in, right? Let's say you're a heart surgeon. It doesn't mean all your kids should be heart surgeons, but you want to see them succeed, be artists or, whatever random thing that they want to be good at. And so, yeah, it is weird to just hand wave, just push your kids out as soon as, they're legal adults.
Years in a silent, empty house and then dying under fluorescent lights in a nursing home alone. Now, there's a pretty massive response when I posted about this on X and Facebook. There were the usual personal attacks. One guy called me a feckless, grifting, degenerate, idiot clown for changing my opinion, which he described as a flip flop, because you can't change your opinion about anything anymore without it being a flip flop.
Yeah, exactly. There's clearly a different like this the main telltale sign that somebody is grifting when they change their opinion is if they don't tell you they've changed your opinion. If they say, I used to really strongly believe X opinion, but here's the logic, or if they're not correct on it, but lack of their logic that led me to change my mind. Right? Of course, you can change your mind, but if you just pretend you didn't, right? Which is a lot like you see recently with like people are going to support whatever war comes up. It's like, oh yeah, I support the anti-war president Trump, and then Trump's okay, we got to go to Iran, and they're like, yeah, that's a great idea. We got to fight Iran. That makes sense. It's like, okay, you're either a grifter or just stupid, or some mix of the two, I guess, right? Yeah, clearly changing your mind isn't in it of itself a sign that you're merely just in it for the money, because you're not automatically right. Now, there is something to be said for being consistent over many years, and you want to listen to somebody who's consistent. You want them to be changing your mind all the time, but sometimes you're wrong, and you gotta be honest about it when you are wrong.
There are also several people who made the case that I was being selfish and hypocritical because I don't live on my parents' property and because I should want my children to spread their wings and explore the world and experience different cultures and so on and so on. But on the other side of the coin, plenty of people agreed with my take, and many said that that they want to create a family compound of their own for their own children. But in general, I noticed that no one seemed to be able to explain how exactly this arrangement became so uncommon. Why did it become so unusual to say that no, we shouldn't launch 18-year-olds as far from their hometowns as possible so that they can learn about genderqueer theory at a university that costs $100,000 a year to attend? Well, one reason is
Yeah, that's the other thing I find so funny is a lot of the parents that are trying to shoo away their kids are sending them off to colleges that they're paying for. It's this idea that, oh, they're just mooching. It's like, well, they're mooching if they're off at a university or spending a lot of money on. And that's another thing. Uh, some parents will have like conditions on like, okay, here's a thing that allows you to stay. It's like, let's say you're at college or whatever. And obviously it's going to vary case by case, but it's not like if you're going to school, you're automatically productive and you're moving towards your future. In fact, I think a lot of people who are in school, uh, like after high school, are actually going downwards because they're spending a lot of money on degrees that aren't going to get them very far in this specific economy. Now, obviously depends, right? You need a degree if you're going to be a doctor or whatever, but for a lot of careers, it's not needed. And so, like, there's a lot of kids where it's like it's better off you're better off if they're working at a job and saving money for a house instead of, spending money on rent and staying somewhere else, right? That's the thing. You save a lot of money if you're at your parents'. Question, what are they doing with that money? Are they saving money because they're just not doing anything and it just gives the ability to be alive? Or are you actually helping them thrive? Or is this allowing them to have more money in a savings account for a house than say, spending on rent, like I said?
propaganda, Hollywood. You go back to the 90s and early 2000s. The main character in Sex and the City lives in a New York City apartment that in real life costs around $10 million. It became so iconic that to this day tourists show up outside and the owner has to shoo them away.
Be more respectful if you can. You can't just take over the street because you like it.
I understand, but that's not our group, but it's okay. We
I
understand.
apologize if it wasn't you. I apologize
I
if it
understand.
This happens all the time. Allow it
I
to go,
know,
and
I
I
know.
lecture the ones who stay.
Now, most people can never afford an apartment like that in their entire lives. It's extremely expensive, even by the standards of New York. But in Sex and the City, it's rent controlled or something along those lines. For young women watching the show, it looks like a place they might realistically be able to live. Friends had a similar idea with Monica's apartment, which would cost something like $10,000 a month to rent in real life. But in the show, once again, it's rent controlled. So millions of young people saw scenes like this and believed that it was a reasonable approximation of life in New York. The massive apartment, the big windows for someone making a chef's salary. And many other shows at the time had a similar message. The idea, that your 20s are when you're supposed to just focus on having fun. That's kind of been the drumbeat that young people have marched to in our culture for a long time. Just wait until you're 30 to get married, to have kids, and so on. But does anyone at this point not realize that this is anti-human, anti-family propaganda? Do you think it makes people happy, leads to human flourishing? What percentage of young women living like that are on antidepressants? How are they doing when their 20s come and go, and now it's their 30s or their 40s, and they're living alone in an empty apartment? Why should we push our kids in that direction? I mean, what's the point? Now, the cliche
And then just what's funny is that as much of this is showed like, oh, you got to be independent, right? There's a certain messaging that you see. It's like, oh yeah, women need to be strong and independent. It's usually pushed on women. And what does that entail? And you'll see like ads from the government of them like on some sort of government program. And so it's not that they are independent from like a man per se. It's that instead of having a husband that gives them the money that they need, say give, I mean, if it's a relationship, I guess they earn it in a sense. But they're just dependent on somebody else, a faceless bureaucracy that's stealing money from other people instead of a husband that's being productive for society. And so yeah, you're so independent. Yeah, these women are so independent.
The thing is to blame all this on the boomers and to say that this whole idea came from the boomers. But the reality is, cliche or not, that they do strongly believe this. And one reason boomers think along these lines is that they turned 18 in a radically different country. The median baby boomer was born in about 1955. The average cost for them to go to school in the 1970s was $500 to $600 a year. Now, even if you account for inflation, the cost of attending a major public university has more than doubled, even with inflation. And the same is true for housing. In 1970, the median home price was around $23,000. And if
Yeah. So the notice that we are paying a lot more for college. And here's my question: are college degrees more or less worth it than they were before? I think they're almost certainly less worth it for most careers. And here's the other thing: the government, as far as I know, has put in thousands and thousands of taxpayer money into colleges. So the government's spending more on it, we're getting less, and we're paying more. Great. What would we do? It's funny is that all of the things that people complain about the most, the government has gotten the most involved in. But hey, man, that's just a coincidence. You're not supposed to notice that.
you adjust for inflation, that $23,000 home in 1970 should only cost about $180,000 today. But that's not what happens. Today's median home is well over $400,000. So that's more than double. So while our economy is better by most metrics, it's also a lot harder for young people to own a home than it used to be. A lot harder. That's because though our economy is generating more money, it's also much more competitive for people who are starting their careers. Young people today are competing against robots, AI, tens of millions of new foreign migrants in the job market. We also have one of the least affordable housing markets in history right now with low inventory, high prices.
Well, real quick, how much are immigrants really competing with, Americans? Like, it's not like when immigrants come here, they don't need anything, right? Every immigrant that comes here, just as much as they need a job, they need resources. And so they I don't know about the specifics, but I'm fairly sure there's just as many new jobs coming in because of immigration than as they are taking, if not more. But who knows, right? But it's just yeah. And then of course we have to be anti AI, right? We gotta hate tools.
And a lot of people who don't want to sell because they got locked into a very low interest rate during COVID. A college
Yeah, with houses, Donald Trump's literally said recently. You can find videos of him saying this, that he wants housing to be more expensive. He's like, I'm not trying to make it cheaper. I'm trying to make it more expensive. He said this, right? So it's not like, gee, I just wish the government would just do the right policy to get it cheaper. No, it's 100% their fault, and they like it expensive because a lot of these people, they're really old and they view their houses as investments, right? Do not view your house as an investment. It might as well be because of how much government manipulation there is, but it's not normal for things to get more expensive over time. In a healthy capitalistic economy, things don't get more expensive over time; they get less expensive because it's more efficient, right? I- Inflation rate isn't just how much prices rise on average. Rather, it's how much the government's made the prices more than they otherwise would be. So you have to look at the counterfactual, the fact that things would almost certainly be less expensive. Like, let's say prices go up 6% a year ish. But that doesn't mean inflation is 6%. It could be 20% because things would have been getting 17% cheaper. I don't know. I am just pulling these numbers out of my hat, but I have to use something as an example. Yeah, it's always the government's fault. Just remember that.
degree, even a degree in computer science or hard science like physics, something useful, doesn't even come close to guaranteeing a job anymore the way that it used to. And all this to say, the arguments in favor of telling your kids to spread their wings are much less persuasive now than they were in the 1950s. In response to my post on X, Mike Cernovich made a similar point. He wrote that when he was an early 20-something, he was able to live in Santa Monica without spending much money. He could afford it by waiting tables and finding a roommate. Well, today, if you want a one bedroom in Santa Monica, you're looking at spending around $3,500 or $1,750 a month with a roommate, and throw in utilities and internet and tax, and you're looking at $2,000 a month easily for one half of a one bedroom apartment in Santa Monica. So if you make
It sounds so trash, man, too. I don't understand the appeal of big cities. Oh my gosh, you get to live in a big city. It's like I'm gonna live in a cramped apartment, busy streets that I can't even drive my car down, so I can live in a left wing state. I,
50 grand a year as a waiter, which is
I mean, it's such a shame. It is a shame how much of like these big business buildings like are in places like in New York filled with people that fundamentally hate business. It's like, okay, you hate business, then leave. Don't live in New York then. These giant skyscrapers. I wish the people that actually did live here in these big cities weren't so left wing and fundamentally hate the very things that they love. It's frustrating.
on the high end.
It's like you see all these people like I wonder, there's got to be a pretty high percentage of the people that hit up, Starbucks are going to be left wing. It's like, whoa, 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 what are you doing at this capitalist establishment selling you coffee? Isn't that? It's kind of weird.
Then after tax and rent, you will have precisely $0 left over at the end of the month. You can't save a dime. You won't build any wealth. You can't save for your retirement, much less your kids' education or living expenses. So the whole idea that you're starting out your life and building is pretty difficult because you can't build anything. You can't save any money. Now, none of this happened by accident. The government began backing loans and grants for college education while also slashing taxes to fund many colleges. So students took on a much bigger burden for paying their tuition. And colleges knew that they could simply raise tuition year after year, and students could get a loan to cover it. Meanwhile, zoning became more restrictive and institutional.
That's another thing, is that loans. A lot of the loaning that goes around, it goes right in hand with college, is totally fraudulent, because what is the point of a loan? What is a business relationship a loan? Essentially, the loan company is saying, hey, we're putting on the risk of you not being able to meet this money. And you in return get money in advance that you can use to start whatever thing you want to start, be it your career at a college or start a business, whatever. That's what a proper loan relationship looks like. You can complain as much as you want about any of that, but when it comes to like student loans, businesses, loans, they'll just give them out like candy. Well, why is that? Is that because all these kids are going to be able to make that money back super easy and they're just such certain investments? No, it's because the government will bail these businesses out. So businesses see no trouble in giving out faulty loans. And so there's not as strong of incentive for these businesses to really look at a kid and go, no, I'm not giving you a loan for this, for your gender science degree. I do not care. Right? But because you're not going to make that money back. But they don't care now because if the kid doesn't pay it back, then so what? They didn't pose any risk because then the government's just going to give them the money.
Buyers purchase hundreds of thousands of homes.
Again, it's the government's fault, right? Whenever you look at anything bad in your life, ask yourself, is it my fault? If it's my fault, then I'm going to fix it. Or is it the government's fault? And that sums up like 90% just there in terms of your issues in your life. You should always focus on what you can control because at the end of the day, the government's going to exist independent of what you do, most likely. But you can't have enough hatred for the government. That's all I'm going to say.
And the borders were opened, flooding the housing market with many more buyers. And all of this happened, for the most part, with the consent of the boomers, many of whom are now aghast at the possibility that their children might want to live near home past the age of 18. So when you tell your 18-year-old to leave the house, where are they going to go? Sure, there are places where they can live cheaply. I mean, do you want your kid to live in, Gary, Indiana, Flint, Michigan? Are there good, high-paying jobs in those neighborhoods? Are they safe? Is that where you want your grandkids to be playing on the playground in Gary, Indiana? In America today, even better.
Is Gary, Indiana a real place? I assume you just made it up, but it sounds like it is a real place. I thought it was just like supposed to represent the middle of nowhere, but maybe it's like an actual like really dangerous neighborhood.
Neighborhoods like South Central Los Angeles are expensive. And here's a 1,500 square foot home that's going for $500,000. It's surrounded by a fence. There are bars on the front door. There's a $500,000 home. Again, to afford it, you need 6 figures in cash. You're putting your life and your family's life in danger for a $500,000 home in a neighborhood like this. It's far more than most people can afford, but that's what they're being asked to do. That's the situation people are facing today. Now, at the same time, there are many people who understand the benefits of giving their kids a longer runway to start their adult lives, and they don't kick their own kids out at 18. If anything, that's the global norm. And many other cultures and many other countries encourage adult children to remain close to home until marriage, and even afterwards in some cases. Something like 80% of South Koreans in their 20s live with their parents. 73% of Greek adults under 35 live at home. More than 70% of young Italians live with their parents. Portugal and Spain are around 50%. But for white Americans, the situation is completely different. Only around 30% of white Americans between the ages of 18 and 34 live with their parents, and those figures include Hispanics, which skew the results much higher. According to Pew, quote, white young adults are less likely than Asian, Hispanic, and black counterparts to live in a parent's home, and metropolitan areas with a higher than average share of white adults among the young adult population tend to have a lower than average share of young adults living in a parent's home. And as you can see from this map, a lot of people living with their parents are concentrated on the coast, which you can see there. In Southern California, where most of the population is Hispanic, it's very common for people to live with their parents well into adulthood. The same is true in New York, where around 40% of the population was born in a foreign country. On the other hand, In pretty much the entire middle of the country and the Pacific Northwest, which are mostly white areas, it's a different story. Again, this is from Pew, quote, with a couple of exceptions, the 10 metros with the lowest shares of young adults living in a parent's home have a higher than average share of white young adults. For example, 4% of young adults in Bozeman, Montana live in a parent's home, and 77% of all young adults there are white. In the metros with the
I guess I gotta apologize for not talking much, but he's just spouting numbers, and I pretty much agree with the message. So I was expecting to disagree more. We'll see when he gets into the next topic.
above average shares of white young adults, the median metro has 14% of young adults living in a parent's home. Now, given everything else we know about how white Americans are under attack in this country, this doesn't seem like an accident. Pretty much every other culture on the planet is focusing on family development, building generational wealth, while white Americans are encouraged to live on their own, often with roommates. Like, it's better to live with a roommate than with your family is the idea. I'm not sure why that would be the case. White Americans predominantly are the ones who are, going forth and taking on enormous debt in the process at a point in their lives when they are not able to do that. And you might say, well, white Americans have a different culture. We wouldn't have conquered the Americas if we stayed at home. Hence the famous quote, "Go west, young man, and grow up with the country." But in reality, for most of this country's history, white American culture generally involved staying close with your family. I mean, there were exceptions, but that's generally the way it worked. We did kind of a deep dive into how families functioned before the boomers. And this is what we found. If you go back to the 19th century, it was common for children in rural New England to sing the rhyme, big house, little house, back house, barn, as an ode to the kind of family compounds that many of them grew up in. This is very normal. This was the norm. This was common. An author named Thomas Hupke wrote a book about these connected farmstead-style homes, which look like this. And, Hupke writes that, quote, by the middle of the 19th century, young married couples in many established farming areas could not obtain a farm and often live with their parents. In a common pattern, the parents would retain control of the older big house with its older kitchen, and the younger family would use the new kitchen. He states that the ideal family unit for most farm families in the 19th century was a nuclear family with the anticipated addition of parents in old age. It was common for households to gain related and non-related members, including aged parents.
I don't know how much this affects it, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of it's zoning laws. Just thinking about this for a second, if you've noticed, big cities have apartment like it's most places I go, it's either you live in a house just like a normal house, and maybe townhomes, or you live in an apartment, and that's about it. And a lot of that's because of zoning laws. Most areas, at least a lot of areas, at least where I live, you're not allowed to build certain types of buildings. You'll get killed for it. Won't get killed, but you'll get arrested. If you resist arrestment, you will be killed. So, yeah, like part of it's just that we don't let people own what they own. We say, hey, well, if you own it, it's yours to do what you want. There's a character from King of the Hill, Dale Gribble, and he builds this stupid thing in his front yard. And, of course, everyone gets upset at him. And he goes, "It's my yard." Yeah, exactly. It's your house. You get to do what you want with it. If you want to put trash on your lawn, it's your house. But it's this sort of maybe reification fallacy where people treat the fact that, your house value goes down if you're next to, say, a duplex or something. Is that true? I don't know. But people treat the fact they treat their house as if they own the value of their house, what it sells for on the market. You do not own the market value of your house. So if somebody else does something that affects your market value other than like literally destroying your property, I mean just being nearby and being a nuisance or something, that doesn't mean that they're violating your rights. You can get upset about it, but not every upsetting thing that happens to you is a rights violation. But because of this, like people think like, oh yeah, the government's gonna zone this area. We're gonna say, hey, you're not allowed to build apartment complexes. You're not allowed to have businesses here. Listen, if I buy a piece of land and I truly own it, because what it means to own something is that I have the right to exclude people from it. That's what it means to own something. And given that fact, I can do whatever I want. And assuming it doesn't impede on your ability to do what you want with your property, and that doesn't include selling it, right? You have a right to sell stuff. You have a right to exclude people. So as long as I'm not infringing on other people's right to exclude people from their property or things from their property, fair game. If I want to build a Walmart wherever I want, fair game. But because we don't let this happen and we just zone the heck out of places, people aren't able to build the houses that they need. And so housing gets way more expensive in certain areas because that either you live in a full family dwelling unit or you find somewhere where the zoning allows for apartment complexes, and that's it. And of course, some places are different, but the fact is zoning is easily one of the worst restrictions we have in this country. And it leads to stuff like this. I think today they'd let you build a house like he just showed. You know, obviously much nicer and stuff, nicer materials. But do you think they'd let you do that? No. No, sorry, you're not zoned to build this here. It's my property. I don't care what you have to say.
Orphaned young, widowed relatives, and neighbors. But this kind of
If you have to ask somebody permission to use something, it means you don't effectively own it. And in this country, you have to ask the government permission to add things to your house. There's a guy in my neighborhood once who was complaining about. He's like, "Well, I went down to the court and I had to deal with the fact that I couldn't build a fence, or I couldn't build a fence in my backyard because it faces a street and there's regulations against that." But he's like, "But the system works because I was able to go in there and fight them in court and whatnot." It's like, no, the system doesn't work because you shouldn't have to ask permission to build a fence in your own backyard. It's not your backyard if you have to ask permission, right? It's like, no, the system doesn't work.
living arrangement has now fallen out of favor. Hubco continues, quote, today the connected house-to-barn arrangement is still the region's dominant farm architecture, yet few farms are still active and their total numbers are fast retreating. In several towns I know well, more than 2/3 of the historic connected farmsteads have either lost their connecting middle buildings or have completely vanished. Now, it's a transformation that in various ways has taken place all over the country for many different reasons. Now, it's true that as of 2020, data does indicate that among U.S. adults with at least one living parent or adult child, 75% live within 30 miles of that parent or adult child. At the same time, only around 35% of U.S. adults had all of their living parents and adult children living within 30 miles of their household. That's according to researchers from the University of Michigan. In other words, while families aren't completely separated, it's now overwhelmingly common for adults to live far away from at least one of their parents or children, and that wasn't always the case, far from it. Take a look at this census data beginning in 1850. That was a significant year because it was the first time that the census tracked the total number of people in a household as opposed to simply tracking the head of the household. And the top graph shows the total number of households, which increased from just 3.5 million in 1850 to well over 90 million by 1990. And the bottom graph is almost the complete opposite, which you can see here. It shows the average number of persons per household in the United States beginning in 1850. They actually included a data estimate from 1790 as well, but otherwise it starts in 1850. In 1850, there were an average of 5.39 persons per household. By 1900, the number had dropped to 4.55. By 1950, that number was down to 3.38, and by 2010, it was down to about 2.6. And what this means is that in the middle of the 19th century and beforehand, it was common for adults to remain in the household they grew up in or on the same property rather than move away and start their own household. And that was how most people, many of them on farms, but not all of them, live their lives. But in every single census beginning in 1850, the average number of persons per household has dropped. It's become less and less common for households to contain entire families, including adult children. And the decline intensified around the turn of the century from 1880 to 1900, and then it picked up again, as you'd expect, in the 1950s and 1960s. Now, it's no secret what happened here. First, there was the Industrial Revolution, which meant that many young people left the family farm to secure more lucrative jobs at textile mills and steel plants and slaughterhouses and so on. The farms didn't need as many people due to the invention of new machinery, and crop prices were often unstable, so there was an economic reason to move out. Add in plenty of foreign migration as well as the freed slaves, and you have the recipe for one of the most significant demographic transformations in the history of the United States. In 1870, only around a quarter of the U.S. population lived in urban areas. By 1900, that number had increased to nearly 40%. And these numbers resulted in many cases from the departure of young people from their hometowns. By the 1950s and 60s, you had many other factors, the GI Bill, the rise of the suburbs, the interstate highway system, air travel, and so on, which made it even easier for families to grow apart. But it's important to emphasize that in the 1800s and 1900s, adult children who left home weren't going off to college to join a fraternity or hang out with roommates. They were getting jobs and getting married for the most part. In 1900, men got married at 25 and women at 21 on average. In 1960, the average man got married at 22. For women, it was 20. Now, as of 2026, the numbers are completely different. The average age of marriage for men is around 31 and 28 for women. Now, you can see the general trend from 1890 to 2017 in this chart from the Census Bureau, which shows the median age when men and women are getting married. So what's happened is that young adults initially moved away from home in order to raise families of their own, on their own property in their own cities. And that was the case for decades after the Industrial Revolution began. But now, young people are moving away from home for a very different reason. They're leaving in many cases to experience a kind of extended adolescence where they delay marriage in favor of hanging out, attending an expensive.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to mention about schools earlier when I was talking about the fact that just because you're going to school doesn't mean that you're somehow moving forward in life, and some, in fact, are moving back. Specifically, I think not all, maybe not even a majority, maybe it's a minority, but not a inconsequential amount of people or kids that are going to school aren't doing it because that they want to grow up, but because that they want to, like you said, prolong their adolescence. They want to be kids longer. They want to be in school longer, right? Now, what number that is, I don't know. You'd have to look into that, but at least it's something that I think I see. But
it's expensive college, experiencing city life, and all that sort of thing. Now, none of this is historically normal or good. I mean, the idea of having adult children move away, not get married, not actually start adult life, but just kind of like hang out with roommates for 5, 10, 15 years, it's never worked that way in the history of humanity. I mean, this is all very, very new. And it doesn't work now. As the historian Stephanie Kuntz has pointed out, it is a very new phenomenon in the context of American history. Quote, the 1950s was a historical fluke. For the first time, young people could afford to move away from home, marry early, and buy a house on a single income.
Okay, now I'll disagree a little bit, but put some pushback. I don't like his emphasis on like the fact this is new. I guess it's kind of important, but it's like it's a very conservative way of framing it. It's like it doesn't matter if it's new, right? There are bad things that have existed for a long time. Slavery isn't a new institution, but it doesn't make it any less bad, right?
That brief period created an unrealistic expectation that this was the traditional American way, when in fact multi-generational living and delayed independence had been the historical norm for centuries. In other words, the perspective that I'm talking about, that I prefer my kids to live near me or even on our property, was the norm throughout most of this country's history, not to mention the history of human civilization generally. There was a period beginning in the late 19th century, accelerating in the 1950s, where that norm was suspended, but that was a unique
It's useful only in how you view it historically and in putting pieces together. But as far as like that itself being a point against it, just throw that in the trash. That's
period when the economy was booming and you could buy a house for 25 cents and everybody was expected to get married very soon after leaving home. Now, to be clear, maybe you do have a very strong argument in your particular situation for encouraging your children to leave your community and your household, but whatever the argument is, you have to recognize that it's completely different from the argument that people could make in the 1950s or even the 1880s or any other point in American history. What you're supposed to think now is that if your kids settle down far away from you, then they've achieved independence and they've succeeded in life. At the same time, the children of the elites, they're not settling down far away from their mansions and compounds. The Kardashians, the Hemsworth brothers, the Kennedys, the Bush family, the Rockefellers, they all bought massive property so they could remain in close proximity to their families. And there's a reason for that. Barring some sort of economic necessity or some very unusual circumstance, it's good to live around people you care about and who you have something in common with. It's a very good and healthy practice.
I'm surprised he hasn't mentioned this yet, and maybe I just didn't hear it, but I think divorce also contributes to this a lot, right? If you have divorced parents, then let's say you have divorced parents, and let's say your spouse doesn't have divorced parents, and that's three different families that how are you that you can't live close to, right? Or that you can or point is it complicates things, right?
Practice to build out a support structure so that you aren't living entirely around strangers who don't know you or care about you. Because even when you do move away and you move away from your family, you move away from your parents, you're just going to be looking for someone else to fill it. Then you have kids of your own. And traditionally, if you live around your parents, you live on the same property, you live in a compound, you live in the same town, well, your parents can help you with your kids. Well, if you don't have that, then what do you end up doing? Well, you drop them off.
Yeah, you can't, I'm a big money pincher. You can't overstate the amount of money that you can save by being close to family, right? You have to pay your parents to watch your kids, and they'll do that, right? Most of the time, they'll do that without any fuss, right? And that's just babysitting. Then there's staying there a couple of years while you're finding your footing, and the money you're saving on rent. The money you can save from, let's say, the skills that your family members might have, right? Because if they might know certain things and they can help you out, right? And even if you are still paying them for their services, I'm sure they'll give you a deal. So just stuff like that.
Daycare. So you're still
if you do still care about your family, even if you move away, no long flights, no long drives, right? And you can see them more frequently and save money on it.
Getting help, you're not entirely quote unquote independent. It's just that in this case, you're getting help from someone you're paying and who is a stranger and who doesn't care about you or love your children, which obviously seems like an inferior arrangement. The goal of every major industry in this country, from Hollywood to the universities, has been to separate you from those people, your family, the people who love you at a young age. They'll tell you it's the way things have always been, but that's not true. It was never true. And that's why in my own life, I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Anywhere worth going is worth going in good boots. And if you walk in wearing flimsy sneakers with your suit, people notice. It looks ridiculous. With the coat there, from cowhide and goat to exotics like ostrich and caiman. All right, here's a story I certainly wouldn't normally pay attention to. This is a show, the existence of which I have never acknowledged and hadn't planned on acknowledging. I've only been vaguely aware of. But it's worth noting that the next season of The Bachelorette has been canceled by ABC. So if you're looking forward to that, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to watch it. And I genuinely didn't know they were even still doing the show. I knew that it existed, but apparently they're still doing it. And I wouldn't be sharing any news about it, except that the reason behind the cancellation is kind of interesting. So the Bachelorette this year was supposed to be some woman named Taylor Frankie Paul. And she was the woman who...
What type of name is that? That's
I guess, the 30 men or whatever were going to, on the show, the contestants would be competing for. I think that's the idea. Now, already this is bizarre, even before we get to the source of the controversy and the reason the season was canceled. It's bizarre because
nobody, and I mean nobody, who you could possibly compete for, in this case, would ever be worth that time. Just, I mean, I get it, it's for television and stuff, but man, not worth it.
Because this woman, if we put a picture up on the screen, and I'm not trying to be mean, although as we'll see, she would deserve it. But she's not very attractive at all. She's not hideous.
She from Fuller House? Or am I stupid? I swear she's in Fuller House.
Kind of a normal looking woman. She's also a divorced single mother. So the idea was that 30 men would be vying for the heart of an average-looking, divorced 31-year-old single mom.
Dang,
Now, correct me if
bro.
I'm wrong, but I think the original premise of The Bachelor was that The Bachelor was a man who
Does
was
she own every Lego set ever made? Is that what's in it? Is that the good part?
like successful and rich. I think that was, I don't know. I think that was the premise. And, that was probably fake. I'm sure it was, but the premise made sense.
This is the type of thing that I'm not. You can't convince me that these men would try and compete for her if there wasn't being on television. That surely that's got to be it, right?
Like, in theory, a bunch of women
Right?
competing to marry the rich guy. Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, it's trash TV, but it makes sense logically. But then they rolled out The Bachelorette, and the show's been on now for a million years, and now we're at the point where dozens of men are locked in a death struggle for the right to marry a woman who is basically in every way less desirable than the average IHOP waitress. And I get that it's reality TV and it's fake, and all the guys are really just there because they want to be on TV and they want to grow their social media brands or whatever. But it's just too much suspension of disbelief. Like, I can't. And we haven't even gotten to the crux of the issue, which is that this woman also has been arrested and charged with domestic violence. She pleaded guilty to aggravated assault related to her domestic violence arrest.
Never mind.
That
She's
was back in
perfect.
2023, so not that long ago.
Actually,
And this
I
was all
get
known.
it.
This
I
was
get
this
it
was
now.
known before the
That makes
season
sense.
had even been filmed. I guess it's already been filmed. Now they're not going to air it. So actually, this was a bunch of men.
Wait. They already filmed all the episodes? Oh, dude. I feel a little bad for the people involved in the production of this. Imagine these guys. They're competing for this crazy, divorced 40-year-old or whatever she is. And just so you can promote your t-shirt brand, and they're not even filming, they're not even going to come out with the episodes.
Competing to win the heart of an average-looking,
That
divorced
sucks.
31-year-old single mother and domestic abuser. Right. And again, all this was all known. ABC brought this woman on, cast her, knowing that she had very recently been arrested and pled guilty to domestic violence. And then yesterday, a video of the domestic violence incident was leaked. And I'm not sure how much of this we can show because it is violent. But here it is.
Yeah, look at you. Look. Yeah,
Oh.
physical abuse.
This is so bad to have. I'll turn down the speed for a second. That's at 1.75 is hilarious. There we go. I don't even know what's happening.
See, Taylor, this is all you do. It's the only thing you know how to do. Holy Let me go. Stop. Dude, leave me alone.
Whoa. Okay. You watch WWE too much, it seems like.
Your daughter is right here.
Whoa, the TV's right there. Be risky. You might hurt something important. Whoa.
Now, if you're listening,
Oh, my mistakes. Yeah, that was really bad. That's terrible. I mean, what interesting thing can you say about that? I condemn this. That's syrup.
listening to the audio version, so to describe what's happening here, Taylor, the woman, is slapping the man whose name.
By the way, anybody who supports any of the recent wars that America is either directly involved in or funding, you don't actually get to be against this because this is way tamer than believably more tame than bombing innocent civilians, including, the over 100 schoolgirls that recently got bombed in Iran. So if you support that, I don't want to hear your opinion on this. As far as I can, this is nothing. This is nothing.
Is Dakota Mortensen kicking him, pulling his hair, starts throwing metal stools at him, even while her daughter is sitting on the ground right there. It sounds like she gets hit. The daughter gets hit. It sounds like the daughter's like, a baby, an infant, and gets hit or is very close to getting hit by one of these chairs that this crazy woman is throwing around the house. So it's pretty brutal. And keep in mind, this woman never served any prison time for this. She was she pled guilty to aggravated assault. She was given probation, I believe. And so, but the video, which had not been released, was released. It went viral, and a few hours later, ABC pulled the plug on the season, and they announced that the season will not air. So,
$200 fine. You don't know how traumatic this was for me.
what makes this case worth talking about? Well, because it reveals, of course, some major disparities that many of us were already aware of in how domestic violence is treated, depending on who commits it. This is one of the most egregious double standards that you'll find in a.
Yeah, you can make fun of the conservatives for playing the double standard card, but it needs to be played. It needs to be played more often. To just say, no, this is unacceptable, right? Aggression is aggression, and you can't treat people this way. And I don't care if you're a woman or a man. And we're not gonna give you a harsher sentence for this. Don't do this, right?
Modern life. Because the fact is that there's just no way that ABC would have ever moved forward with a season of The Bachelor if The Bachelor, the male lead on the show, had just been arrested and charged with domestic violence.
They wouldn't have moved forward with the season of The Bachelor if the man, like, if there's a video that got leaked of him yelling at a woman.
I mean, can you imagine a scenario where a video like that exists, except you reverse it and it's the man doing all that? And that guy then
So we wouldn't need the chair. 'Cause we're strong, bro. But we would never do that. Men shouldn't do that,
becomes The Bachelor.
obviously.
ABC casts him as The Bachelor. There's just no way. But that's what happened here. They were prepared to move forward with the show, knowing about all that. It's just that the video came out and it got such a big reaction, they had no choice but to cancel the season.
See, like, look how good his background is, bro. Like, I think most of my background, like some of my background is it's okay, but dang, bro, I need more money. I gotta invest.
And this is the double standard. And even now, if you look at the commentary around this story, you'll find plenty of people on social media defending the abuser. There's a lot of that. A lot of comments
What?
basically saying, well, he probably deserved it.
See, I was joking earlier. I was like, well, clearly everyone's going to be against us. Still, I wasn't joking. I was serious. I'm like, what is there anything interesting to say about this? Because everyone agrees it's not controversial. Apparently, it is.
Woman is treating you like that. It's because you're antagonizing her.
Yeah.
This is a post from Ashley Hollis, who
You're probably just rage baiting her.
is herself, I think, a former reality TV contestant. This has 7,000 likes, and there's a bunch like this all over social media. She posts, "I'm not saying Taylor Frankie Paul is an angel, but toxic men like Dakota are the kind of guys."
I'm not saying she's perfect. I said earlier, as a joke, I said, nobody's perfect. As a joke.
Who purposely push limits to get big reactions. I don't think it's a coincidence his call logs are leaking and the story's getting out. He's a clout chaser. That is the consensus.
He's on the wait. I assume that guy. Maybe he wasn't, but I assume that guy's on The Bachelorette. Like, yeah, he's a clout. Everyone in these if you're on television, period. I'm a clout chaser. Everyone's a clout chaser if you're on the internet. Like, why would you even say that?
This view among many women, certainly not all, but many women on social media right now.
You know, she might have hit him with a chair while she, next to one of her kids, but he likes to get attention. That's what we really need to be focusing on. It's like, shut the hell up. Why would you say that?
Is that the abuse victim, this guy Dakota, who I don't know anything about, is actually at fault because he pushed her. He pushed her buttons, right? He antagonized her.
Yeah.
He pushed the limits. Hey, if this woman is beating you with a chair, it's because you pushed the limits, mister. Stop, hey, stop pushing it. Again, this is the kind of logic that never gets applied in the reverse. Ever. I mean, you're not ever going to hear this. And if it were, if you did hear something like this, whoever made that argument would be...
Yeah, imagine a video came out of a guy doing that. And you imagine these same women going, well, what did she do wrong? Did she make dinner? Did she do that?
roundly condemned. And for good reason. Because there's no justification for domestic violence, no matter who commits it. And you look at Taylor's own statement. She put this out by her through her publicist after the season was canceled. And here's what it said.
I would not want to be her publicist. All these women do make it easier.
Taylor is very grateful for ABC's support as she prioritizes her family's safety and security. Oh, her family, like the one that she was throwing a chair at. She's prioritizing her, child's safety by throwing a chair at the child. After years of silently suffering extensive mental and physical abuse as well as threats of retaliation, Taylor is finally gaining the strength to face her accuser and taking steps to ensure that she and her children are protected.
If I was her publicist, I'd just be like, ChatGPT. We're gonna post it. I'm not gonna try and think of anything to say.
From any further harm. There are too many women who are suffering in silence as they survive aggressive, jealous ex-partners who refuse to let them move on with their lives. So she's the victim. She's been suffering silently. She's gaining strength now. She's trying to survive. Meanwhile, she was the one throwing metal chairs around the house. And again, this would never fly in the opposite direction. It would not fly like those chairs were flying around the house. And this matters because actually, domestic violence by women is very common. It's not some sort of rare aberration, exception sort of thing. Now, there's no doubt that men are more likely to be arrested and charged with domestic violence. Yeah. But a number of studies have been done trying to measure the actual rates of domestic violence, even if it isn't reported or charged. And those studies consistently show that women account for 40 or 50% of the perpetrators of domestic violence. Men are less likely to report being the victims of domestic violence, and in part because of the embarrassment that...
Yeah, that's the thing. And I've said this about, like, when I find out, like, a guy who, like, wrestles a girl in wrestling at school, it's like, you're in a lose-lose situation for yourself, man. If you beat her, you just beat a girl, so way to go. And then if you lose, then you just lost to a girl. And it's a similar thing here, where it's like, if you're getting beat by a woman, it's like, well, you're getting beat by a woman, that kind of sucks. But at least it's private. But if it comes out, if you go to court, then it's like, at least it might not stop happening. But then it's like, kind of a weak dude. Now, people shouldn't feel that way about them, but I'm just saying, it's a lucky situation.
Many men would feel, and courts are less likely to pursue those cases. But the evidence suggests that women commit domestic violence nearly as often as men do, or just as often. Now, unsurprisingly, men are more likely to cause severe damage when they do commit domestic violence. So the majority of severe cases, the majority of homicides are committed by men. The majority of murders in general are committed by men. Although even there is a caveat that I think is important, which is that when a woman kills her unborn child, which happens a lot, that is not counted in any violence stat
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point.
or murder stat. And if we did count that, which we should, then we'd find that in fact women
100%
commit a
should, yeah.
huge majority of the murder.
This is something I found all the time with studies where like, like for instance, be like immigrants commit more crime or immigrants commit less crime. And to me, it's like, those studies are trash. I don't care about those studies because what they mean by crime is they mean disobey a government edict, but the government is made up of idiots. So I don't care what the government edict is, right? It's like, well, they steal more on average or whatever. Like, what do you mean by steal? I mean, I'm not saying it's not objective, and the whole point is it is objective, and you're using subjectivity. Like, are you including taxation on there? Because that's stealing too, right? So you always have to consider that when you're listening to studies.
In this country every year.
So what's happened lots of things that are crimes that the government doesn't consider crimes, and lots of things the government considers crimes that are not. And are actually good, like doing what you want on your own property.
The type of murder that a woman is most likely to commit has just been categorized as not murder, and so that kind of lets them off the hook. But if you were to include that, well, that's like 1 million murders a year, give or take.
Uh-oh.
Now, granted, if you're counting abortions, then you'd also have to count as accomplices the people working at the clinics, some of whom are men. You have to count the fathers who are supportive of the abortions or insist on them, which happens plenty of times. But even if you do account for all that, there's still no question that women would be responsible for, or at least involved in, a huge majority of murders. So all this to say, the way that we treat violence varies significantly, depending on the sex of the perpetrator. There is a whole category of brutal violence that isn't even counted because women commit it. And even in the categories where we do count it, we don't weigh it the same. And when you take everything together, I think what you find is actually pretty bleak, unfortunately. And it's that the reason why men commit more murder on the books anyway, according to our current laws, and more severe domestic violence, is that they're bigger and stronger. Yeah, I don't actually think it's that men are necessarily more inclined to violence. I think when you look at everything objectively and even in an even way, you might say that's not exactly the case. They're more capable of inflicting damage. And
it's also just because men are more willing to go against the government, more willing to go against government edicts. And so when your category of crime is based on what the government says, you're going to end up with more men doing that because men are more willing, for whatever reason, to take risks. That's why, men do make up more CEOs, but we also make up more murderers. We make up more politicians because, for whatever reason, men are more willing to just go and do crazy stuff, good or bad.
The only reason women don't commit a higher share is because they're less capable of it. I mean, that's a bleak way of looking at it. To say that the only reason that women don't kill more men is that they can't, not because they're less inclined. I think that's bleak. I think it's true though. Evil men inflict violence on those who are weaker, and women are weaker. Evil women generally inflict violence. Sometimes they inflict violence on those that are stronger than them. But that's generally not the way evil works. If you're an evil, violent person, generally your violence is going to go down. It's going to go towards people who are physically inferior to you. So evil women inflict violence on those who are weaker too, but men generally are not weaker. So that's why they are more likely to inflict violence on children. I'm not just talking about abortion. I mean, this is something that isn't discussed hardly at all. But the majority of child abuse in the home is committed by women. According to the most recent data I saw in 2023, the perpetrators of child abuse and maltreatment are majority female, about 54, 55% to about 45%. So now it is true that men, maybe backtracking slightly, I do think that men have a natural aggressiveness that women don't have, generally speaking, or that most women don't have. So there's something about masculinity that is aggressive. And if
we're risk takers, what can I say?
Target it in the right direction, it's a good thing. There's a kind of noble violence and aggression that we should target in that direction.
It would, okay. I mean, I know he's a different way, but if it's noble, it wouldn't be aggression. But even he's using the word differently. It's fine. Everybody can be a base libertarian like me. What can I say, bro?
But my only point is that certainly the women are just as likely to be evil as men are. That's certainly.
Comment down. Should I get a fish like he has in his video? Like what is a cool thing that I need in my background for the next video? Whatever comment, caveat that it has to be possible and not too expensive, but whatever is the top most liked comment of like what I should have in my background, I'll get it. It'll be in the background of my next video. So you choose what that is.
No question about that. Men are not more inclined to evil than women. That's we're all fallen, and so we all have that capacity. And if you're an evil person,
No,
You want to do evil.
no, we're not all fallen. We all have free will. And we all choose to do good or bad, but we're not inherently anything because if you're inherent, then you don't have free will. And then, actually, so we are inherently certain things. But I mean, as far as moral actions, there's no such thing as inherent because if you have to do it, then you have to do it. There's no you could do otherwise. In that case, there's no moral accountability, and thus it can be evil or moral.
And that generally is going to involve, in some way, inflicting yourself on someone else. You know,
There's another thing, and maybe I'm just misreading this, but important reminder: morality isn't about doing bad things to others or good things to others. Morality is doing bad or good things specifically for yourself. That you involve might some actions might involve others, and that's an important thing. But like if you were alone on an island, you're Robinson Crusoe, totally stranded, all alone. There's no Friday or whatever on the island. Morality still exists. It's not like, oh, there's no other people involved, so morality just doesn't say anything. No, there's still certain actions that will help you thrive, and there's certain actions that will not help you thrive. So
exercising power
it's
and
important.
control over them because you find pleasure in it. And the point is that women have ways of doing that on those that are weaker than them or those who are vulnerable to them, susceptible to them. It's just that it isn't always measured the same.
I think there's a certain. I'd have to think about this more, but a certain moral. What's the word? There's a there's a corrupt version of I think a moral thing, which would be like direction. Like giving people direction is moral, but controlling them isn't. So like for instance, like a parent might direct their kids in a certain way, but they shouldn't control them, you could say. Let's say if you're a boss, you help direct your employees towards, the optimal thing that to make everybody the most money. But you don't control them, right? Control implies some sort of morality, you could say.
Looking good shouldn't feel like a chore, which
Like I said, you have to think about that more, but
is why our sponsor, Mizzen & Main, revolutionized
but
menswear.
I
All
don't
the wrinkles. Plus,
care.
Mizzen & Main is veteran-led and has year-round military. All right, post-millennial
Should I just start making up ad spaces in my videos to make myself look cooler? Raid Shadow Legends.
has this
I'll do that.
independent journalist Nick Shirley, who rose to prominence after exposing fraud taking place in Minnesota, has released a new video report about the level of fraud in California. And it said that he and his team were able to uncover around $170 million in fraud taking place in the state related to home health care, daycares, and other services that get government subsidies. He posted, Minnesota's big, but California's even bigger. We uncovered around $170 million in fraud as these fraudsters live in luxury with no consequences. We all work way too hard, pay too much in taxes for this to keep happening. So we have a clip here we can play of Nick Shirley's latest investigation.
Wait. The taxes were stolen to begin with. So you don't need, that's the funny thing, is like we're looking into this and turns out they're committing fraud with the tax money they've been receiving. It's like the tax money should have never been taken from the citizens to begin with. It's like for instance, I don't need to do any studies to figure out like, what is the money that you government spends going to? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It could be going towards, cool things like orange juice, but it doesn't matter where the money goes. Don't steal. Pretty simple. I don't steal. You shouldn't either. And you shouldn't say the government is okay to do it either.
This dropped a couple of days ago. And this one, too, has, I don't know, tens of millions of views, a lot. Here it is, watch.
So what's the need for a 1,000% increase in hospice here inside of LA, in California?
You're asking me?
Yeah, because you're in the industry, so we figured might as well ask you. You obviously found it was a good business to start. You just started yours, right?
I started my business in
How long?
1997.
Okay, great. So
How old
how
are you?
come
I'm
you're seeing such an increase in hospice care here?
Maybe I don't know if everybody likes the business. What will I say? I do this from 1997.
Good for you. And so
Yeah.
since you've been in the industry for so long, why do you think we're seeing a 1,000% increase in hospice care here inside of LA, in
I
California?
cannot answer that question because
Looks like they're all running out of here. Everyone's heading out. We just gotta answer some questions. And why can't?
Who's running out?
What? Look at all the people scattering out of here. They're all here just a minute ago.
It's strange.
Anybody seen Better Call Saul? I keep thinking, maybe I'm wrong to think this, but I keep thinking about the scene from the first season. This is pretty spoiler free, where he's at a care facility where they're seemingly committing fraud, and they start just shredding papers in the other room, and he's so mad about it. So that's what this reminds me of.
You know, there's over 80 people connected to one of these dormant motel rooms with no furniture, and they're getting $30,000 per person. It's millions of dollars. We come and knock on the doors. An abandoned shell company.
I don't say it right, and I don't care about those people.
Could you just answer the question? What's the need for a 1,000% increase in hospice care here inside LA, inside California? You're in the industry, sir. You know better than me.
You're asking me? No, I don't.
You've been in it since 1997.
Yeah, but I don't.
So what's the need for an increase?
Maybe there is a lot of poor people already. I don't know what to say.
A lot of old people are dying.
So I don't know
Me just hanging around.
if that guy in the clip is one of the fraudsters. It looks like he isn't. He said he's been in the business since the 90s, which is a pretty good indication that it's legitimate. But the numbers that Nick talks about are undeniable. I mean, there's really no other plausible way to explain the statistics, except there's a lot of fraud going on. And it doesn't mean that everybody in the hospice industry in California is a scammer, obviously. There are actual hospice businesses in the state. And there are hospice businesses where where they do
The guy is in this camera. I do feel kind of bad for them blowing a spot up.
in-home care, so they'll have
That's
an
pretty
office
bad.
off-site somewhere, and but there's no one
Well, I guess if he really is receiving government money, then he kind of is, no matter what, is
receiving
wrong.
hospice care in the office. They
Right.
send to the home. So all that is true, but the sudden explosion of hospice care, the big complexes with empty offices, all of that clearly indicates fraud.
They're ghosts, Matt. I know Matt doesn't believe in ghosts, but that's what it is. Ghosts need somewhere to stay too, man.
And as always,
Messed up.
most of these people seem to not be Americans. I mean, it's fraud mostly perpetrated by foreigners. There have been some attempts to debunk Nick Shirley's investigation. There's this article in Yahoo News that's making the rounds. Headline is, Nick Shirley says he exposed $170 million in California hospice fraud, but his last big investigation raised serious doubts. It says, Nick Shirley's latest video is 40 minutes long, not a TikTok clip, not a highlight reel, 40 minutes of a 23-year-old in a hoodie that reads, support independent journalism, walking through Los Angeles strip malls, knocking on the doors of hospice providers saying, he says they're billing Medicare for services they never delivered. He films a custom-wrapped Cybertruck and a new BMW parked outside buildings that look like they should be condemned. Nearly 9 million people have watched it in less than 2 days in an era when most people won't sit through a 2-minute ad. That's not just a video going viral, it's a verdict arriving before the evidence has been checked. Okay, first of all, actually, we should put the text on the screen here because I want you to see this and understand that this is not really the topic. This is a side, just to get sidetracked for a minute. But just so you know, this article was on Yahoo News, and I saw someone shared on X. This is 100% written by ChatGPT, like generated by ChatGPT, and hopefully you can see that. I mean, I think a lot of people still can't spot AI writing, but once you learn how to spot it, you see it everywhere. It is everywhere. I mean, it is completely taken over. So much of what you already see is AI generated, and people don't know it. In particular,
Should I write a script making fun of Matt Walsh on this, written all by AI? I'm just playing.
these whatever news site you go to, so many of them already. It's like the whole thing is AI generated now. So this is AI. I bet $1 million this is ChatGPT, and there are a few tells here. First of all, the first few sentences, AI loves doing this. AI loves this thing where it's a statement about what something is, followed by a list of things that it isn't, followed by repeating the original statement. So it goes like, this is X, not Y, not Z. This is X. AI loves that. Anytime you see that, that's AI. I don't know why, but ChatGPT loves doing that. That's a clear tell. It's filler. It's redundant. And plus, you notice that with AI writing, it homes in on details that don't matter. Like it just kind of so it starts with the video is 40 minutes long. Okay, so what does that have to do with anything? What does it have to do with you debunking the video, which is what you're supposed to be doing? And then it happens down here again. In an era when most people won't sit through a 2-minute ad, that's not just a video going viral. It's a verdict arriving before.
I don't know. Maybe he's right and it's AI, but I feel like a lot of these articles they're just written the same. Like I hate reading stuff like this because they're cringe.
Evidence has been checked. I mean, that's all ChatGPT. That is AI slop all the way. That's a twofer. That's a buy one get one because you have that's
like don't as much as it's fun to make fun of AI slop, don't sleep on the human slop because there's a lot of it too.
That's X, not Y. And then you also have the M dash. AI loves the M dash. So anyway, I'm going to move on from that. There's no debunking going on. This is all AI slop. But really, there is no way to debunk this. I mean, it's just a fact that fraud is rampant, especially in California. And it's so bad that even the mainstream media is starting to notice. So Fox News has this report. A single building in Van Nuys, California is raising eyebrows with big questions about the dozens of hospice providers and healthcare agencies registered at the address. The Marabi Professional Medical Plaza has been dubbed ground zero for Medicare fraud in the hospice industry. The building is 3 stories, 32,000 square feet. According to CBS News, which recently visited to investigate the hospice company.
Yeah, man, I'm just craving Better Call Saul. I'm like 1 season in, bro, and I need to get back on that. This is what it's reminding me of. I don't know what to say. That's on my mind. I know, so I should be saying something that's more interesting. And here's my 2 cents. That's my 2 cents. Is I want to finish this video and go watch Better Call Saul.
89 hospice companies were registered in the building. Fox News Digital reviewed state records showing 50 hospice companies and 97 home health agencies registered to just that address. CBS News said it found more than 700 of the nearly 1,800 hospice centers in Los Angeles County exhibited 3 or more flags that the state has cited as indicators of fraud. So it's completely out of control. And this is what makes it so enraging. It's not like these are sophisticated fraud schemes that are being uncovered here. There's a reason why YouTubers are able to just show up and expose this stuff. It's incredibly obvious. It's happening right out in the open. I mean, you only do this when you're very comfortable that no one is going to bother even investigating or looking into it all. Like having a business complex where you just have a bunch of fraudulent businesses all clustered in the same spot. All it takes is one person to look at it and go, that's weird. Why would you have dozens of the same business in the same complex? That's strange. And they have total confidence up to this point that nobody will do that. I mean, they're setting up learning centers where they misspell the word learning. Again, we all, that's a great joke now. We all get a good laugh out of it, and we should. It's funny. But it's also not funny because it's so in your face. It's a learning center that misspelled the word learning. Like, how did no one look into that? How did that not raise?
I don't know, man. That's just public school. What can you say?
Raise any red flags? And all it takes is somebody to show up with a camera and say, well, this is weird. And yet they've been able to do this. The scammers have operated with impunity because there's been no attempt at all, no real attempt to stop it. Here's what I would like.
Imagine you have like a girl over and just notice this ad. And you're like, what do you want to watch? Got Netflix, Hulu, Daily Wire Plus. What? Yeah, we could watch. I haven't seen the Michael Knoll episode today. Have you? I mean, If you're down, don't do that.
Like to know. Or maybe I don't want to know. I don't know. But
You don't want them to fall in love with you too quickly.
if you were to add together all of the different forms of fraud, I mean, like hospice fraud, the autism treatment center fraud, various kinds of insurance fraud, Medicare fraud, and then you add in EBT fraud, you add in the nonprofit NGOs that get government funding for no legitimate reason, add in the stuff that Doge was looking.
There's no legitimate reason for government funding because governments are illegitimate. Just got to point that out. I repeat myself a lot, but hey, man, nobody else is saying it besides other people saying it.
Into like the
Exactly.
entire agencies of the government that exist just as jobs programs for bureaucrats. All of that is fraud. Add all of that together, all of the ways that taxpayers are being defrauded, whether illegally or legally, technically. What do you end up with? How many hundreds of billions of dollars are actually being stolen from us every year? That's what I would like to know. I mean, it's almost impossible to count. It's almost impossible to do an accounting of this, but somebody should, because I guarantee it's staggering. Eating well shouldn't drain your wallet. Our sponsor, Cook Unity, brings real meals from. Cancel anytime. Experience chef quality meals every week delivered right. Life insurance policy starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Head to policygenius.com/Walsh to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save.
Should I start reacting to ads now so I can put my 2 cents in? Comment that down below.
That's policygenius.com/Walsh. All right, finally, there's been a renewed push, it seems, recently, from what I've noticed, a renewed push to normalize polyamory or non-monogamy.
Yes.
Just in the last week,
I've been
I've seen
waiting
2
for
articles from
this.
major publications. New York Magazine had this headline: "Could opening your marriage lighten your mental load? For some moms, non-monogamy is a way to reclaim more than just their sex drive."
Yeah.
And it's an article all about.
The best thing to spice up a marriage is not being married.
I'm gonna read the
Oh, okay.
article. It's all about these women that have cuffed their husbands, and it's really helped. It's helped to de-stress. They don't have as much mental load anymore. And then the New York Post, in the same week, had this headline: "We're a throuple raising young children together. Here's why we're more responsible than regular parents." It says an inseparable throuple who raised 3 children together say they're more responsible than regular mom and dads. Frank Eric Blackcloud, Titania Brown, and Lexi Bowman live under one roof with kids Oliver, Sage, and Naomi. Eric, who works in pest control, and tattoo artist Titania.
Where's CPS when you need them? Now, I'm joking a little bit. I don't really think the kids should be taken away, actually, but stupid stuff that you sometimes hear CPS will grab kids for, and then there's stuff like this, and you're just like, I'm not saying you should, but kind of weird when you do decide.
First met 11 years ago as
Just
friends,
saying.
and they brought in the third person. And anyway, it goes into their whole biography. I don't need to read it. But let's just put this lovely throuple up on the.
Even putting aside being in these weird relationships, like 3 or 4 people, stop calling it marriage. Marriage is between 2 people. I don't know what to tell you, man. That's just what it is. And so yeah, just stop. Just leave the term alone. If you want to be weird and be a freak, just go do it over there. But don't pretend it's marriage.
Screen so you can see what these people look like.
That's all I'm
The
asking.
guy works at pest control, it said. So did he meet the other 2 on the job? I mean, were they the pests? Were they the infestation that he was going to clear out and then ended up falling madly in
Are you sure this isn't just a picture of employees from Hot Topic? Are you sure?
love with them? I don't know.
Double check that.
But one thing that's kind of encouraging, because you got to look for encouragement wherever you can find it these days. It is kind of encouraging that this whole thing, this bull, has not really caught on. They're trying. They've tried. They are trying.
Pretty sure that sticker on his laptop's like slightly askew and it's kind of bothering me.
They're still trying. Like I said,
Yeah,
2
right.
articles in a week about non-monogamy, quote unquote, polyamory. They want it to catch on, but it's just not landing. Like still, if you go about in your daily life, you're not going to meet anyone in the real world who lives like this, and unless you hang out with a bunch of degenerates.
You can hope.
And why is that?
You can hope.
Well, for one thing, every polyamorous group is just a horror show. Like every time the media tries to highlight one of these groupings, and you look at them and you go, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to behold. You see these people, they look like they come from some kind of Tim Burton acid trip, and they look like manic depressive Willy Wonka characters. So it's not the best advertisement for the lifestyle. Anybody who's even like slightly tempted to go the polyamory direction, well, you survey your options, you take a look at what's in stock, what your choices would be.
I think a lot of them they like being different. They like being sexually deviant for its own sake. It's not even like it just sucks that what I like to do just happens to be that way. It's so crazy. No. Like being queer, it's not just like being gay. It's specifically being abnormal. It's rejecting the normal for being the normal. It's rejecting being correct. It's nihilistic. It's nihilism. It's nihilism.
And it's you recoil in horror. So that's a problem. But most people never really get to that point because it turns out that this kind of lifestyle is actually unnatural. It is actually unhuman. Obviously, it's really bad for children who should all be removed from this home for their own safety and well-being. But it's also miserable for any sane adult to be involved in. It turns out that the monogamous setup, one man, one woman, is not some like top-down oppressive system imposed on us. It is rather a natural outgrowth of human nature. It's what we are made for, what we are meant to do. The Bible tells us.
If you're meant to do, that's very, the Bible. It's very intrinsic God coming down. But the fact is, like, we do have a certain nature that's objective in reality. And given that, there's certain things in certain relationships that they're good for you and certain that are bad. And seeing as the people that take these relationships, this one's not good for you.
It's right in the first chapter of Genesis, or second chapter. And what do you know? The Bible is right again, as always. And this is what's so great about being a Christian. Our faith prescribes certain things, mandates certain things, certain life choices. And if you reject those mandates, if you go and try to rebel, you're going to quickly find out that actually the mandates are not arbitrary. There is no happiness to be found outside of what is being prescribed to us, because the mandates are deeply rooted in our nature as human beings, because our nature.
But what he's saying right here, I just, it's true. I mean, a little intrinsicism just baked in there, just a teeny bit, is coming out. But I think this is a great way of framing it.
Was created by God, who also gave us the mandates.
And see God.
That's why it hasn't come. Although they tried.
The mandates are objective; they're not intrinsic.
They tried to push it.
I need to do a video on that at some point, but that's what I'll say for now.
They'll push it, but again, there's a reason why it's one man and one woman. No other arrangement works. It will only bring you hardship and misery, and you'll end up looking like Edward Scissorhands or something, apparently, for some reason. So there's that too. And that'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend, Godspeed.
Okay, that was the episode. Like I said, I mostly agree with him on this episode. I'm sure it's definitely on more of a government-focused episode because this is just so cultural. I would have more interesting thing or just more to say, even if you think it's boring. But yeah, there's the episode. If you like this, if you really got through the whole thing, then thank you. I know this one's long, and I know that I know some of it was probably kind of boring. So if you want me to react to any podcast, either a show I've listened to before, like maybe I could do one with Ben Shapiro. I've listened to him for a while. I could do one with Michael Knowles. I haven't watched him for a while. So if you want me to like revisit a show I used to frequently listen to, Part of the Problem is another one, then have me do that. You just let me know. Just comment it, or comment any show that you think might be of interest to me, or any clip. Just let me know, and I'll react to it next week. So, thanks for watching. Tucker Marler, out. Bye.